Consent and respectful relationships education involves teaching students how to understand, communicate, and respect boundaries in their interactions. Within the Australian Health and Physical Education (HPE) curriculum, consent education is not just an add-on, but a mandated component designed to support well-being, personal safety, and gender equality. Cahill et al. 2024. It contributes significantly to preventing sexual violence and harassment and aligns with the social and emotional learning outcomes. CAR 2025. Yet the concept of consent is complex, shaped by social culture, cultural values, historical shifts, and ethical dilemmas, making it a critical curriculum issue in HPE. From a socio-cultural perspective, consent is deeply embedded in the social norms and power structures that significantly impact young people's lives. The school environment plays a crucial role in this. As Carey et al. 2022 explains, it can either reproduce or challenge dominant narratives around gender, sexuality, and relationships. Many traditional approaches to teaching consent are shaped by heteronormative assumptions, often sidelighting LGBTQIA+ students whose experiences and identities are not reflected in classroom discussions. Taylor 2016. Peer dynamics and persuasive influence of social media further complicate young people's understandings of boundaries, agency, and communication. In February 2021, student and advocate Chanel Contos launched the Teach Us Consent campaign, collecting thousands of testimonies from young women about sexual assault by male peers. The campaign called for mandatory comprehensive consent and sexuality education, addressing issues like toxic masculinity, rape culture, and peer inclusivity. Although New South Wales schools are required to teach consent, it is often avoided due to its sensitive nature. The effectiveness of this education is influenced by factors such as school context, teacher confidence, resources, and the broader societal attitudes. According to the 6th National Survey of the Australian Secondary Students and Sexual Health, Fisher et al. 2019, while 83.6% of students receive RSE through health and physical education, only 53.7% apply it in decision making, and just 29.1% trust teachers and reliable resources, highlighting the need for more effective and engaging consent education. In light of these complexities, it is essential that consent education moves beyond surface level approaches to critically address the social and cultural factors that shape young people's understandings of relationship, power, and identity. Important questions for educators include: are we reinforcing outdated gender roles when we teach about relationships? And are all students' identities reflected and respected in this content? These questions are crucial in ensuring that consent education supports all young people in developing respectful, informed, and equitable relationships. Consent is a critical topic in health and physical education, particularly in the context of diverse cultural backgrounds. Williams, 2015, underlines that understanding consent through a cultural lens helps educators appreciate the varied beliefs and practices that influence students' perceptions and behaviours. From a cultural perspective, consent is shaped by societal norms, traditions, and values. Different cultures have unique ways of discussing and understanding consent, which can affect how students perceive and practice it. Mansouri and Jenkins 2010. For example, in some cultures, discussions about consent may be influenced by gender roles and expectations, while in others, community and family approval play a significant role. The Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership emphasises the need for educators to create safe and inclusive classrooms for all students, highlighting that a cultural perspective on consent education is crucial to achieving this goal. Exploring consent from a cultural perspective is valuable because it highlights the importance of cultural sensitivity in education. It encourages educators to recognise and respect the diverse backgrounds of their students, fostering an inclusive environment. Burton et al. 2021. This perspective raises important questions about how cultural norms can impact students' understanding of consent and their ability to express it. Important questions for educators include: how can we respect diverse cultural values without compromising student rights? And are our materials inclusive and culturally sensitive? Examining consent from a cultural perspective challenges educators to think deeply about the impact of cultural diversity on students' understanding of consent. It encourages the creation of educational experiences that are respectful and inclusive of all cultural backgrounds. By addressing the questions of respecting diverse values and ensuring inclusivity, educators can develop materials and practices that honour cultural differences while upholding students' rights. This approach not only enriches the learning experience, but also promotes a more equitable and respectful educational environment. The evolution of the HPE curriculum over the last 30 years has seen significant changes, with consent education in Australia at the forefront, McDonald and Glover 2016. Throughout the much of the 20th century, sex education focused on abstinence, reproduction, and risk avoidance, often omitting discussions about agency, pleasure, or respect. Leah et al. 2004. This approach was largely driven by societal norms and moralistic views that prioritize risk avoidance over comprehensive sexual education. From the 1990s, there was a noticeable shift towards health promotion and positive relationships. This period marked the beginning of more progressive approaches to sex education, emphasizing the importance of healthy relationships and emotional well-being. Hayes et al. 2022. However, it wasn't until recent years, especially following the #MeToo movement and Chanel Contos 2021 petition, that explicit conversations around gendered violence, emotional literacy, and consent became more central to the curriculum form. Ollis 2010. These movements highlighted the urgent need for consent education that addresses the realities of gendered violence and the importance of emotional literacy. Despite these advancements, remnants of outdated ideologies still shape how some schools approach the topic. Some educators remain reluctant to move beyond risk-based or moralistic frames, which can limit the effectiveness of consent education. This reluctantness often stems from a lack of resources, training, or support for teachers to adopt more comprehensive approaches. Important questions for educators include what outdated practices are still influencing our teaching today, and how have public pressure shaped curriculum content? Historical evolution of consent education in Australia highlights the ongoing struggle to move beyond outdated practices and embrace a more comprehensive and inclusive approach. The shift towards addressing gendered violence, emotional literacy, and consent in recent years marks significant progress, yet challenges remain. Educators must critically reflect on their practices, questioning whether they are perpetuating outdated ideologies and considering the impact of public pressure on curriculum content. By doing so, they can ensure that consent education is relevant, inclusive, and effective in promoting respectful and informed relationships among students. Addressing these questions is crucial in creating educational experiences that support all young people in developing healthy, respectful, and equitable relationships. That is not just a legal concept, it's an ethical one, grounded in empathy, care, and respect. Teachers must navigate complex moral responsibilities, including how to create safe spaces for discussion while avoiding re traumatization for students with lived experiences of abuse. Comedy 2003. There is an ethical tension between being age appropriate and being honest. Over sanitizing the content can result in lessons that feel irrelevant or disconnected from students' realities. Hurst 2003. At the same time, content must be delivered with sensitivity, ensuring students feel supported rather than shamed. This balance is crucial in creating an environment where students can openly discuss consent without fear of judgment or re traumatization. Powell 2010 emphasizes the importance of teaching consent through a lens of power and justice, helping students understand the broader systems that influence their choices. This approach encourages students to think critically about the societal structures that impact their understanding of consent and their ability to exercise it. Consent should not only be seen through the lens of avoiding harm, but also as a matter of healthy communication and mutual respect. It needs to be understood that consent is not just about avoiding risk, it's also about boundaries, comfort, and ethical relationships. Focusing solely on risk when teaching ignores important contexts like emotional readiness, power dynamics, and peer pressure. Important questions for educators include how do we ensure discussions are empowering, not shaming, and what duty of care do we have when students disclose harm? The ethical perspective on consent in HPE underscores the importance of empathy, care, and respect in education. Teachers must navigate moral responsibilities to create safe and supportive spaces for discussion. The Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership. By addressing the ethical tension between age appropriateness and honesty, educators can ensure that consent education is relevant and connected to students' realities. Additionally, teaching consent through the lens of power and justice helps students understand the broader systems influencing their choices.